I'm Avae. Hello. Let's talk about isms. For starters, let's first go over a few ground rules as it is, because it's necessary to go through that. For starters, we're going to go with the assumption that stereotyping is necessary to function. Discrimination is necessary to function. The brain, there's like trillions of things in the universe. There is no possible way that the brain can handle all of this information without doing some sort of grouping things up and treating them. Sort of like if you can see a difference between a squirrel and a bear, that's discrimination. If you the way you behave, if the way you treat a squirrel and a bear are different, that's discrimination. If the way you expect a squirrel and a bear to behave is different, that is stereotyping. You need to do these in order to function. We need a ground basis for starting on. And one other thing I'm going to go into before I even go further is to disprove the sort of notion of, well, since we're going to be talking about isms, only this group can be this. The only white people can be racist or only men can be sexist. It's like, nah, it doesn't work. And I'll show it by a very simple sort of logic statement. If all A are B and only A are B, then B is A. So if all white people are racist and only a white person is racist, then the definition of racism is white person. That is the only definition for racism. If only a white person can be racist, then the definition of racist is white person and nothing else. Has no meaning beyond that. And at that point, it becomes a derogatory term to describe an ethnicity or race because you never use the word racist in a positive sense. It is never going to be used that. It is being used to devalue and dehumanize. So if only white people can be racist, then calling someone racist is itself racist. I know that is probably weird, and I'll have tons of people say, no, you're wrong, you're wrong. It's like, no, no, no. Logically speaking, that is the case. From this point, I'm going to be going with the more dictionary definition. Discrimination is to treat two different things differently based on accepted criteria. You treat a squirrel differently than a bear because the squirrel is different than a bear. You've accepted the criteria that defines a squirrel, and that is different than the criteria to define a bear. So you discriminate them. Thus, things like racial discrimination, aka racism, is to is discriminatory behaviors based on a person's race. Sexism is then obviously discrimination based on a person's sex. And as I said before, stereotyping is necessary to function. The only problem comes when stereotyping is exclusively bad or used to devalue people. Of all X are this, this is bad, therefore all X are bad. Stuff like that. Because again, the all white people are racist, racism is bad, therefore all white people are bad, is itself racist. But moving on, it's not just, oh, hey, you are or you not are not. It's how much of each one you are. Different people have different sets of priorities. When you're going, each person has a sort of mental checklist that they go through and what categories they are and how high in the priority it is determines how much that category influences who they are. And for an example to sort of better demonstrate this, I'm going to go over my own sort of isms. First and foremost, I am specious. I am sorry, I am unabashedly specious. I will not treat a bear the same way as I would a squirrel or a human. They are different species. I don't care if they dress the same. I don't care if they talk the same. I am not going to treat a bear like I would a human. I am specious. Second one, clothing. This is very strange for some, but no, the second priority in my mind for where I categorize people is clothing. If you are wearing a suit, nice suit or dress, I will use that to treat you in one way. Whereas if you're wearing street clothes, I'll treat you in a different way. And if you're wearing rags, I'll treat you in a third. The first thing I see when I see someone is what are they wearing? And that is the number one priority in my mind on, well, after species, on how I will behave around them, how I will treat them, how I will talk, what kind of behaviors can I expect them to make? Generally, sort of like when someone is wearing a suit, you don't expect them to do a lot of street talk. Uh, Next is sexism. I would rather it not be sexist, some third, but I'm a male in the current society. For my own protection, I have to be sexist. It is a simple state of fact. There are things that you can say or do with men that is perfectly acceptable and will have no repercussions against you. But if I do those exact same statements or actions with a woman, they could choose to completely end my life. They can get me fired, they can get me thrown in jail, completely destroy my life for the exact same behaviors. Because of which, you have to be sexist if you're a man. You have to be. Society demands you be sexist because there are things that if you say them to one, you're fine. If you say them to the other, you're not. And that is just simply how society works. Next, where are we? If I am seeing someone in a supermarket, I will treat them differently than if I saw that exact same person in a dark alley or at my workplace. It discriminates on how I treat them. I am discriminating based on where we are. If I see you at a bus stop standing next to me, I will probably just assume you're waiting for a bus. If I see you in a supermarket, you are probably getting food. If I see someone walking to me in a dark alley, I will probably get the fuck out. Next, age. I will not treat a 5-year-old kid the same as I would an adult, and I would not treat an adult the same way as I would a really old person. However, one sort of caveat to this is adult is a very, very large range for me. And that I have like a categories for mental is like, okay, 5 and under, or actually probably closer to like 8 and under, and then like 9 to 15, 15 to like 22, and then 22 to like 60, and then over 60. So adult is 22 to 60. Really huge range. But I do still discriminate on that. And then finally, race. I am still racist, but if you notice, all the different categories I have to go through before I start looking at what race are they. So I would consider myself to be not very racist, but I acknowledge race exists. Therefore, I am racist. If you acknowledge a category exists, if you are using it as a valid category, then you are that ist. I have actually found, typically speaking, people on the left are going to be more racist and more sexist than people on the right. It is not so much the matter of, oh, hey, they are worse people, but the fact that if you are actively looking for something in order to fight against it, you're going to be viewing things through the context of that thing. So, like for me, racism is all the way at the bottom. It is the last thing that shows up that would influence how I behave around someone. I will treat someone, for the most part, the exact same, regardless of race they are, but it will have some impact. Most notably for me, it's I suck at faces. So, especially with my job, it's where a lot of your face is covered up anyway. I have sometimes trouble distinguishing people, especially if they are of certain races. I acknowledge it, but I'm also really terrible at names anyway, so. But if you are actively looking to see, okay, is this an example of racism? You are probably going to have racism in like your top 3 things. If someone does something, they might be like me, where it's like I say someone to someone black, and it's like, okay, for me, it's just nothing. It's they're there, and all the other categories have already said, and I say this. For someone on the left, they might think, okay, was what I said determined by race first? And that is why they are more racist. Now, here is the thing, and actually even Morgan Freeman once talked about this. The best way to end racism is to get rid of race. Morgan Freeman is like, okay, how do you deal with racism? Is don't talk about it. If we completely remove racism as a valid category of description, if you can no longer classify people, if it is no longer socially acceptable to classify someone by their race, if you are no longer allowed to call someone as being black or white or Hispanic or Asian, then people will eventually start shifting to other categories. Race will drop lower, other categories will jump higher. And in about probably 2 to 3 generations, we will get into a situation where no one will be racist anymore because no one will even consider race at all. They will not see a black person and think of them as a black person. They will see them as maybe okay inner city or suburb or rural. They'll think about where they are located, what type of person, what education, stuff like that. That will be the determinant for what they are. Race will no longer play a factor. And when race no longer plays a factor, you are no longer racist. So again, the best way to remove racism is not this, okay, we need to balance the scales. The best way to remove racism is to completely eliminate race as an acceptable classification. Unfortunately, you can't do the same about sexism because there are biologically 2 sexes. They have completely different anatomy, and the species continuation requires that the male and the female sex actually get together to make a child. So given current technology, yeah, you can't get rid of sexism. Once we start doing everyone by test tube babies, that might be a different matter, but for now, there are physiological differences between the two that is required for both medical and for continuation of the species. Therefore, sexism just has to stay for now. It is unfortunate. Um, I think from a more grand scheme of things, one of the biggest problems in today's culture is the fact, at least in the US, is the fact that there's actually two different definitions of racism being used by the people. And it depends, you can tell which one it is by simply talking to them. The center and the right, the independents and the right, they are still using the classical definition of racism, the one I described at the beginning of this video, that racism is to discriminate based on sex or race. If you are if someone's race is determining whether or not you give them a job, then that is racism. And they see racism as bad. The center and the right, no one is, well, there might be a few, but almost no one is saying racism is good. They all believe racism is bad. It's just that for the center and the right, racism means discriminating against. If race plays a factor in whether or not you are doing a thing, then that is racist. And so they look at the country and see there are no real policies that are discriminating against black people. There are no policies that prevent black people from getting a job. There are no policies that prevent uh, Hispanics from getting a job or Asians getting a job. We've already made these things illegal in the civil rights movement. There is anti-dissemination laws have been removed, so a black person can have a relationship with a white person and it's no longer illegal, and that is a good thing. And all this other stuff, so when they see the society, they see a society that is, well, flawed and not perfect, but they don't see it as racist because there are no active things actively pushing these other races down. There are a few policies they see as racist because they are like uh, there are some racist policies put in by the left that are actually making things worse, but that could be a different video. But those do discriminate, and those are policies that they indirectly cause certain races to be lower, despite the fact it's trying to help them. But the point is, for them, for these people, a white supremacist is someone who believes that white people are inherently superior to all other races and that the other races must be put in their place. The sort of Nazi version of white supremacy, of the Aryan race is better than everyone. The problem is, with the left, you have this new sort of religious ideology of identitarianism, where what your identity is determines your level of privilege. That some people's identities are inherently superior to others. So for these people, white people are inherently the superior race, and that is bad. So there is a difference between the races. Some races are inherently superior to others, some are inherently inferior. And that this fact that they aren't equal is an injustice, and not actively trying to reverse the scales is racist. So as I was saying, it's like for them, they believe white people are better. They believe that white people are the supreme race, and that by not trying to push the superior white man down and the inferior black man up, people who don't do that are racist and white supremacists. And that's what I was saying. It's like it's two mutually exclusive ideologies that are being at play here. For the center and the right, racism is to discriminate based on race. White supremacy is to hold the white people as being the superior race. They do not see that. They see all races as being equal, just the circumstances are different. So your starting point is different, but you are equal. To the left, they see not discriminating based on race as racist and not acknowledging that white people are better and must be pushed down as white supremacists. Which is why you often get this whole thing of one says, oh, you're this, and the other one gets confused because they are mutually exclusive definitions. Personally, I am more of the opinion of the right and center of this, the classical definition. Because as I said, the way to get rid of racism is to just get rid of race, which can't be done with the ideology of the left. But there's that. But I do think it is very important when you're considering conversations that this sort of mutually exclusive definition must be approached when dealing with a conversation. The left sees the country as racist because it's not actively trying to correct the system. They see white supremacy because people are not actively saying they're white supremacists and must push the white people down. They see people just going on about their day, trying not to discriminate. And that is why they see everything as racist and everything as white supremacist. It's because to the right, they're the white supremacists. And I'm sure that's going to get me a lot of hate from the left, but that is the case of things. And that is what I meant from the title of being an ist without being an ist. It doesn't matter what side you're on, the other side is going to call you an ist. If you're on the right, the left is going to call you a racist because you are not actively you're not agreeing that white people are better and must be pushed down. If you're on the left, you're going to be called racist because you are actively discriminating based on race. You're encouraging discriminating based on race. How you deal with this, I don't know. It is a conversation. Personally, I think that the best way to deal with society is just force the left. If you force the left, do the Daniel Davies thing of approach of if you get the left and the right, force them to talk to each other. They will probably scream at each other for a while, but if you force the left and the right to talk to each other without being allowed to leave or vilify the other, eventually there will be some sort of understanding. And then hopefully the country will de-escalate a bit, de-radicalize a bit. But that also requires other things. But I think this video has been going on long enough. Thank you everyone for watching. I am Avae Ism. Till the next time.